The screen fades from black to a grainy security feed. Rain streaks across a dimly lit parking lot at 3:17 a.m. A low voice begins. I never believed the stories until the night I sat alone in the guard shack watching camera 4. The one pointed at the old service elevator that hadn't worked in 12 years. At first it was just the usual quiet shift, the kind where the only sound is the hum of the fluorescent lights and your own breathing. Then the elevator doors opened on their own. No power, no noise, just those heavy metal doors sliding apart like something inside had finally decided it was time. My name is Marcus. I worked security for a decommissioned office complex on the edge of the city for almost 2 years. Most nights, nothing happened. The place was empty except for storage and the occasional maintenance crew that never stayed past dark. I liked the solitude. It paid the bills and let me think. But after the first month, I started noticing small things. A chair moved in an office on the 7th floor. Footprints in dust where no one had walked. I told myself it was rats or drafts, until the night the cameras caught her. She appeared just after 2 a.m. on the monitor for the East Corridor. A woman in a gray business suit standing perfectly still facing the wall, her back to the camera. I zoomed in. No ID badge, no reason for her to be there. I called out over the radio even though I knew no one else was on site. The speaker crackled, but nothing came back. When I looked again, she was gone. 30 seconds later, the elevator on camera 4 opened by itself. I grabbed my flashlight and walked the long hallway to check it in person. My boots echoed too loudly. The air felt thicker the closer I got. When I reached the elevator, the doors were closed again. But the call button was warm, like someone had just pressed it. I wrote it up anyway. Stupid move. The car jerked and hummed like it hadn't done in years. On the 7th floor, the doors opened to complete darkness. My flashlight beam cut through dust floating in the air. I stepped out, and the elevator closed behind me without being called. That's when I heard the typing. Slow, deliberate keystrokes coming from an office down the hall. I approached with my hand on my baton. The door was ajar. Inside, a single desk lamp was on, though I knew the power was cut to that wing months ago. A woman sat with her back to me, typing on a computer that wasn't plugged in. Her fingers moved, but the screen stayed black. I cleared my throat. She stopped. Her head turned just enough that I could see the side of her face. It was pale and smooth, except for the deep hollows where her eyes should have been. She whispered something I couldn't quite catch. It sounded like my name, but stretched out and wrong. I backed away slowly. The typing started again, faster now. When I reached the elevator, it wouldn't open. I slammed the button over and over while the typing grew louder, echoing down the corridor. Finally, the doors slid apart, but the car wasn't there. Just the empty shaft and the cables swaying gently. I ran for the stairs. Behind me, I heard high heels clicking on tile, moving at the same pace as me. Not faster, not slower, matching me perfectly. I made it to the ground floor and burst out into the rain. The guard shack lights were off. Inside, my chair was facing the monitors, but someone was sitting in it. I never went back for my paycheck. The feed cuts to static before fading into the next segment. Rain continues, but now it's falling on the windshield of a yellow cab moving through empty streets at 4 a.m. My name is Ahmed. I've driven nights in this city for 11 years. You see a lot when the normal people are asleep. drunks, cheaters, kids running from something. But the passenger I picked up last October still rides with me in my head every shift. She flagged me down on a quiet road near the old industrial park. No streetlights working, just her standing there in a soaked white dress holding a small suitcase. She looked maybe 25. Pretty in a tired way. She asked for the cemetery on Maple Hill. Unusual destination, but I took the fare. Her voice was soft, almost grateful. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. The heater struggled against the cold coming off her. I glanced in the rear view. She was staring straight ahead, eyes wide open like she was afraid to blink. Water dripped from her hair onto the seat, but she didn't seem to notice. I tried small talk. Asked if she was visiting family. She smiled a little and said she was going home. Something about the way she said it made the hair on my arms stand up. The GPS lost signal twice, even though we were on main roads. When I looked back again, her suitcase was open on the seat beside her. Inside were children's toys. A stuffed bear with one eye missing. A plastic truck. Things that didn't match her age. She caught me looking and closed it gently. Her fingers were wrinkled like she'd been in water too long. Halfway up the hill, the cab started losing power. Engine sputtering, though the tank was full. She leaned forward and whispered that it was okay. They were waiting for her. I asked who. She didn't answer. Instead, she began humming a lullaby I hadn't heard since my own childhood. The same one my mother sang when I had nightmares. The cab died completely at the cemetery gates. I turned to tell her we'd have to call for help, but the back seat was empty. Just a wet spot on the leather, and the stuffed bear sitting upright staring at me with its one good eye. The meter showed a full fare plus tip. I never entered it. I sat there for a long time with the doors locked. Rain drumming on the roof. Then I heard small footsteps on the gravel outside. Light, like a child running. They circled the cab once, twice. On the third pass, something small pressed against the window. A tiny handprint appeared in the condensation. 5 fingers. Then it slowly dragged downward, leaving streaks. I started the engine somehow and drove away without looking back. The bear was still on the seat when I got home. I threw it in the dumpster, but the next night it was back on my passenger seat. Wet again. I keep driving. Some nights I see her on the roadside. She never flags me down anymore. She just watches. The scene shifts to flickering fluorescent lights in a long hospital corridor. The clock on the wall reads 2:47 a.m. My name is Elena. I worked the night shift on the pediatric ward for 4 years. Most parents think the worst thing that can happen is losing a child. They don't know what it's like when the children come back. It started with the boy in room 312. He was 8 years old. Leukemia. His mother had stepped out for coffee. I was doing rounds when I heard him laughing. Real laughter, like he wasn't sick anymore. I stepped inside and found him sitting up in bed, pointing at the corner by the window. There's someone there, he told me. She wants to play. The corner was empty, but the curtain moved like someone had just brushed against it. I checked his chart. Temperature normal. Vitals stable. He asked if I could read him a story. His favorite one about the shadow that lived under the bed but only came out when adults left. I humored him and read a few pages. When I finished, he looked past me and said thank you for bringing her back. I turned. Nothing. But the room smelled like fresh rain and crayons. The next night, he was gone. Passed peacefully, his mother said. The bed was stripped and waiting for the next patient. 3 nights later, I heard laughter again coming from 312. The new patient was a 5-year-old girl recovering from surgery. She was fast asleep. But the laughter continued, soft, playful, from under the bed. I knelt down with my flashlight, dust bunnies, a forgotten sock, and 2 small bare feet standing perfectly still in the shadows. They didn't move when I shone the light on them. I stood up quickly and the laughter stopped. The girl woke up crying, saying her new friend didn't want to leave. She described the boy from 312 perfectly, including the scar on his knee from a bicycle accident. I requested a transfer to another floor, but they were short-staffed. The pattern continued. Children who died on the ward would visit the ones who were still fighting. They never hurt anyone. They just played, hid toys, whispered secrets. But the living children started getting worse. Fevers that came and went, drawings of figures with hollow eyes standing beside their beds. One night I found a little girl drawing on the wall with a crayon. She had drawn a line of children holding hands leading into a dark doorway. When I asked who they were, she said the ones who stayed, the ones who couldn't go home. She pointed to a figure at the end of the line that looked like me. Same uniform, same tired eyes. I erased it immediately. The next morning, my supervisor asked why I had written "help me" on the wall in room after room. My handwriting. I don't remember doing it. Last week, they found me in the supply closet at the end of my shift. I was sitting on the floor, reading a story out loud to an empty bed. The book was one I had never seen before. The pages were damp, and the illustrations showed children with smiles too wide. I quit the next day. But sometimes at night I still hear the laughter. It follows me home. The final segment opens on dense forest at dusk. Trees pressed close. A ranger station light glowing weakly against the coming dark. My name is Thomas. I spent 12 seasons as a forest ranger in the Northern Reserve. People get lost out there. It's normal. What isn't normal is when they find their way back changed, or when they find you instead. It was late September. The leaves had turned and the trails were quiet. I was doing a final sweep of the old fire tower trail when I came across a tent pitched perfectly in a clearing that wasn't on any map. Bright orange. Brand new. No one around. I called out. Nothing but wind in the pines. Inside the tent was a single sleeping bag and a journal with fresh entries. The handwriting was neat at first. A man named Daniel writing about his solo hike, day 1, day 2. Then the tone shifted. He started mentioning the other hikers, people he could see through the trees watching him. They never came close, just stood among the trunks in their colorful jackets, smiling. He tried to approach, but they backed away, keeping the same distance. On the final page, the writing grew shaky. They want me to join the group, he wrote. They say the trail is better together. I closed the journal and radioed it in. The dispatcher said no one named Daniel had filed a hiking plan, no missing persons reports matching the description. That night, I heard footsteps circling my station. Slow, deliberate. I stepped outside with my light. The beam caught movement between the trees. Several figures, maybe 7 or 8. They wore bright rain jackets like hikers, but their faces were wrong. too pale, eyes too wide. They stood perfectly still when the light hit them. One raised a hand in a friendly wave. I backed inside and locked the door. The radio was dead. No signal. The footsteps continued circling closer now. I could hear them whispering. Names of trails, names of people, my name. They knew it. Around 3 a.m., the knocking started. Polite at first, then insistent. I sat with my back against the wall, gripping my rifle. Through the window, I saw Daniel's face pressed against the glass. He was smiling the same way the others had smiled. He mouthed something. Join us. The trail is better together. At dawn, they were gone. The orange tent had vanished too. But when I searched the clearing, I found multiple sets of footprints leading deeper into the woods. All the same boot size, all walking in perfect step. I followed them for half a mile before they simply stopped in the middle of nothing. No bodies, no struggle. Just the prints ending like the people had been lifted away. I transferred to a different sector after that. But every season when the leaves turn, I hear the footsteps again. Sometimes in my dreams, I see the group standing among the trees waiting patiently, their jackets bright against the dark, smiling because they know eventually everyone gets lost. And the trail is always better together. The screen fades to black slowly. Rain falls somewhere far away. A faint static hum lingers. If you're watching this at night, maybe check your doors one more time. Make sure the lights stay on. And if you hear something moving just beyond the edge of what you can see, remember some things don't want to be found. They just want company. Sleep well. Or don't. The stories never really end.